Hi everyone. Welcome to the third session of day two of the 2025 North American Virtual Reference Conference. I'm Gensley Mondesir, Virtual Reference Librarian at Scholars Portal, located at the University of Toronto. And I'm the coordinator of the ASCA Librarian Service, a virtual chat reference service helping students from 16 universities across the province of Ontario. I'll be your moderator for the following session. For the attendee, your video and audio have been turned off for this session. If you have questions, please use the Q&A. There'll be time allowed at the end of the presentation for questions. This session will be recorded and made available on our website in the next month. For our first lightning talk, Jan, Erin, and Pamela will talk us about ticket black holes and incessant beeping, how a chat interface impacts reference anxiety. Okay, take it away, Jan, I guess.
All right,
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Jen Sonia Lang. I'm the online learning librarian and previous reference coordinator at Washington State University, and I'm presenting with my colleagues Erin Vizbak and Pam Martin, who have both previously served as the reference coordinator at WSU. Erin is the humanities librarian at WSU, and Pam is the instruction and user services librarian at University of Idaho. We're going to be talking about kind of three separate things today. First, we'll introduce our research, then we'll talk about some technology barriers, and then we will leave you with some takeaways to take back to your university. So first, getting into our research. We initiated this research because members of our reference team showed hesitation in staffing cooperative reference shifts, and we wanted to see whether this was a larger trend and what was causing anxiety among reference librarians. In case you're unfamiliar with cooperative chat, which we also call global chat, it's a membership of libraries across the US and UK that help each other with answering questions from their institutions in order to have 24/7 virtual reference for their patrons. And this is important because it will come up a bit later, but librarians can preview the chat before claiming it. So they can basically pick and choose which chats they want to answer, which isn't really an option when you're just monitoring local chat or questions from your own institution.
So we were inspired by our colleagues' hesitation maybe to work global chat, to work this cooperative chat. So how do we do that? Well, there are two parts. The first are survey questions. We had a survey. We put it out to people who work global on SpringShare from the United States. We included questions about training, expectations that operators had for themselves and for their larger reference team, and how they felt when monitoring chat and referring questions back to local libraries. We also took real patron questions that we had received, and respondents reacted to some of these. You see some examples down at the bottom right there. And tell us if they felt any anxiety or any hesitancy to pick up these questions. We also added location to those questions because they could be coming from anywhere, your state, the US, or the UK, right? So we had part two to this, which was that after we got our data back, we decided we wanted to have a fuller picture, some context maybe, so we conducted 11 follow-up interviews. And interface and technology issues came out pretty naturally in these conversations. But there were two questions that specifically caused them to come out. The bottom one there is actually, what would you change about the cooperative chat system interface? So that's a question about interface. Of course, interface is going to come up. But the other one is there anything that would reduce your own anxieties or hesitations to staff cooperative chat? And interface stuff actually came up all the time there. So today, what we're really focusing on is technology as a barrier. So this technology allows us to do this, right? Technology is what enables us to reach and assist patrons globally. But one of the most anxiety-producing aspects of chat is actually the technology itself. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So while the chat interface is not the sole reason that people were hesitant or felt anxious, training often focuses only on the technological aspects of global chat, right? We're told like, hey, this is how you work global chat. This is how you work the system. It doesn't really talk about the human side of it, the anxiety producing side of it. So our presentation today is really focused on different aspects of the technology and the chat interface. How does this technology impede the services we provide on local chat? And does it contribute to any anxiety we feel when providing global chat reference help?
Getting into some of those specific technology barriers. The first one that we're going to be talking about is the widget form or the text when whether a patron enters an email or the welcome text from librarians that show up. So in our interviews, we had several mentions of the text that automatically appears when a patron starts the chat. They wished that the messaging was consistent across libraries and that libraries put thought into what the text says when a cooperative librarian logs on, especially because most patrons don't actually know what the term cooperative librarian means. So using that term can cause confusion for the patron. This text really helps set a patron's expectations for what they're going to get from the chat when they're talking to a librarian outside of their institution. This is something that we set up a while ago and haven't really thought about since. So I decided to go in and look at our settings. And several of our widgets had completely different messaging, and a lot of them actually weren't really helpful at all. So going into your settings and making sure that this is set up in a way that doesn't include jargon and sets patron expectations accordingly can make a huge difference. If your library doesn't give database access to cooperative librarians on chat, making a note of this in your welcome text helps patrons understand what is actually possible within the chat.
So in addition to setting expectations or clear messaging in the chat widget, the widget placement also impacts patron expectations of the help that they'll receive and the types of questions that librarians are being asked to answer. So in this first quote, you can see that one respondent felt that it was misleading to send students needing IT help to a librarian at another school. This may lead to frustration by the librarian that they can't answer it, or by the patron that they aren't receiving an instant resolution. Many of these types of questions are due to immediate need, such as needing software to help complete an assignment. This can lead to increased anxiety on the part of librarians that they cannot help and possible avoidance of the question. As Jen mentioned, you can pick and choose in this space. This last quote illustrates not feelings of anxiety, but feelings of boredom at receiving a number of questions that they can't answer, which becomes very repetitive. One of our survey respondents indicated sometimes feeling like a cooperative chat is a glorified answering machine. When students are continually directed to chat to ask questions that librarians cannot answer, either due to distance or incomplete FAQs or technology that they can't do hands-on, librarians may just stop answering them and students may be disillusioned with the service. And so here's just an example, 2 examples. Oh no, okay, good, it popped up. 2 examples of IT support in the library, and then the 24/7 chat is advertised on here without sort of explanation that the librarians might not be able to help, so. And as the title of our presentation, ticket black holes. So feeling anxious about where a referral ends up was also noted several times in both the interviews and surveys. These are just a few of the responses. When we attempt to answer a student's question and then ticket it for their librarians to follow up, there's no notification regarding whether they received the chat. For some librarians we talked to, this was totally fine, noting that they cannot get bogged down in worrying about other institutions' patrons. One respondent said they, quote, wash their hands of it. But for others, there was an uncertainty of what might be on the other end, and a concern that questions might, quote, just go into a deep well and never get answered. Cooperative chat librarians, once they refer a patron, cannot see what happens after they end a chat, although they can go in and look at their transcripts until they ended that chat. So the anxiety of chat may come less from not being able to immediately answer the question and more from the fact that they don't know what will happen in these next stages. This may be especially anxiety inducing when working with patrons from schools that have few or even no librarians, and yes, there is at least one of those, or if they're in the UK and the library won't open for another several hours. One librarian noted that they don't know what timeline I can tell them, while another one said it may not even be helpful in follow-up because the person needs this in the next 2 hours. And just another thing about missing chats to point out, I don't know if any of you have done this before, but it's sometimes a surprise to people. There is this missed chats thing if you're using SpringShare. This is when nobody picks up a student's chat, and sometimes tickets hang out in there if you're not checking this constantly. So just to point that out if you're unaware of that.
Pam, you're muted.
I got it. When we help patrons from other libraries, we don't always have access to that library's databases, right? In global chat, some libraries provide chat operators access to electronic resources through a generic login, and others don't. So there's kind of some inherent uncertainty there, if it makes sense. So when chat operators aren't given login, they worried about their ability to really help the patron fully, to use their librarian pedigree to actually be able to help these students. But many survey respondents also just reported that it's frustrating not to know whether you're going to get that golden ticket or not. Are you going to be able to get into the databases or not? So to go back to what Jen talked about with the welcome message and kind of posting like, hey, this librarian you're talking to may not have access to all the resources that you and your library have, might be a way of setting those expectations. It doesn't necessarily lower librarian anxiety maybe about this, but it can at least kind of frame it or set those expectations for the patron. So where do you get those passwords? Well, you get them from the FAQs. The FAQs, when the passwords are there, they actually have a lot of information. You can see the passwords are blacked out on this example on the right-hand side, but FAQs are used in global chat to share information with global chat operators. They basically have all the information you should need at a quick glance to help the most common questions. But we found that interviewees express frustrations with the FAQs, saying that while they can be useful, they are often not updated or insufficient. A few librarians mentioned using Google because they just weren't able to search the FAQs well and they had failed them. And one called out SpringShare, the quote at the bottom, saying, I think SpringShare in particular has a duty of care. I know they've done some work with the FAQs and tried to standardize them, but I think that could be expanded and clearer, some more uniform sort of FAQs that work for everybody.
Another issue that we heard about was toggling. So in the LibChat interface, the chat conversation, the patron information, and the library policies or FAQs are all in different tabs. And this makes sense because it would be way too much information for one page. However, this does lead to a lot of toggling back and forth, which can cause losing your place, difficulty in finding things. It can also make you feel like the clock is ticking to respond back to the patron because you're getting lost in all of the tabs and policies. This was an issue that came up multiple times in our interviews, and one of our interviewees suggested that it would be helpful to be able to pop up these sections in new tabs or windows, which we all agreed would make it easier to navigate between this information. And funnily enough, we realized last week that this is already a feature. Some of these small features are overlooked and a big reason why talking to your reference team and training are so important. And the last and biggest issue is the notification sound. So the absolute biggest interface issue that causes anxiety that we saw in both the survey and the interviews is the new chat notification sound. When you're working cooperative chat, it feels like it never stops. One interviewee likened it to a toddler that needs to pee. We were also going to try and play that notification sound during the slide, but we couldn't get it to work because Zoom is really good at getting rid of outside noises. But yeah, we wanted to recreate that ding, ding, constant new chat. But several people talked about needing to mute their tab or turn the sound off during a chat shift, which is necessary for their sanity, but also can be easily forgotten about and lead to missed chats. While this sound can be changed in settings, any noise over and over again is bound to get on your nerves. There were several good interface ideas about how to mitigate this issue while we interviewed people. One is that if you're working on a current chat, the new chat sound could be automatically muted. Another is that you could select a setting to only hear the notification if a local chat comes through. Cooperative chats are constantly coming in, and you can see those and grab them pretty easily if you're not in the middle of another chat. But being alerted that there's someone from your library starting a new chat would be immensely helpful while cutting down on that constant chiming.
Hello. So one of our respondents, like Pam said, commented that SpringShare has a duty of care to ensure that we all are able to fully provide good service to our chat patrons with few barriers or frustrations. However, there are no set expectations in terms of updating FAQs, providing consistent messaging, making sure our database username and password work, or even to have one of those. And I understand totally that like some schools and contracts, you're not allowed to give that out. Just to name a few things that would make everyone's job a little easier. We can't just ask for immediate changes to the interface, but based on these comments we got, we wanted to suggest a few things you could do now to make the chat experience a better one for your patrons, yourselves, and the librarians on the other end. So first, open lines of communication with your staff and have conversations about chat often. Training usually centers around using the tool itself or how to respond to certain questions. Talking with your team about anxieties in providing chat service may reveal things that could be easily tweaked or improved. You may also learn about features that you were unaware of, for example, the FAQ pop-out feature that we just learned about. Then these little features are not always obvious to everyone, so perhaps having a show and tell or technology workarounds show and tell, like what is the best way to help a student when you can't access that school's resources would be a good place to start. Second, periodically update your information. I'm sure we all know this, but just a reminder, check your database login if you're allowed to have one, update your FAQs, even do a mock chat like Jen did just to see what our messaging kind of all was, to see what's coming through on all of your entry points, making sure it makes sense and is consistent. This will also help identify other pain points in the experience. Third, close the communication loop. Not every librarian needs a confirmation stating that their ticketed question was received, but if they worked particularly hard with the student, it might be a good idea to just even say thank you and touch base with them. Or if you want to know that a chat was received, you could leave an internal note asking them to confirm. We try so hard to humanize ourselves and our patrons in this sphere that we may forget about our human colleagues on the other end of this. I personally also let them know if information is outdated or a database access doesn't work. These things can get overlooked and we're all just trying to do our best. Fourth, set up your chat in a way that makes sense to your institution and that sets both patrons and librarians up to succeed. Some respondents noted that the placement of the chat widget means that like IT questions might go to chat. While referring these questions is just a part of participating in the Global Chat Cooperative, it's crucial to temper patron expectations when using the chat after hours, rather than simply promoting a 24/7 service. These expectations can also be set in the welcome messages. Students may not know what cooperative chat means or understand why their own librarian's online, so we might just encourage you to review this message and get input from your patrons. Also, while I might err on the side of being specific, one of our respondents was actually not in favor of this and felt that saying that you are a librarian from a specific university may just confuse them more. So in the absence of a set expectation regarding this messaging, just being as clear and consistent as possible is crucial. And just a side note, I was reviewing my own ratings, and one of my one ratings was from someone who hung up because they didn't understand why their own librarian wasn't answering. So I was like, shoot. So yeah, the messaging was not consistent there. Another thing that I've been seeing more of lately is a librarian saying, "Hi, I'm Erin, a human librarian." We've been laughing about this as something that surely a robot would say, but it's a useful reminder that patrons that we're not a machine. And last, just keeping in mind that technology issues can compound already present anxiety. It's generally not the sole reason for it. It's already nerve-wracking to quickly answer questions using websites and databases you're unfamiliar with and typing furiously away and hoping that you don't disconnect. You can't read their body language, and so you can't look at them kindly when they're panicking, right? We all genuinely want to do our best, but it's difficult when we're feeling frustrated by outdated information, hit roadblocks to accessing resources, or must spend time convincing our patrons that we really, really want to help them. A successful cooperative chat program at your university requires an integration of not just training how-tos, but also ongoing how-do-yous. How do you approach XYZ? How do you deal with this annoying glitch? How do you feel in order to cultivate a more cohesive and comfortable experience for everyone? And just thank you really quickly to also thank you for listening, but also thank you for all of you that answered our survey. I'm sure there was a few of you in this audience that took our survey. So if you did, a big, huge thank you to you for that. So.
Thank you very much. Um, let's see if we have a few questions or think we'll feel free to ask a question. Um, and what surprised you the most about the technology barrier regarding your findings? Let's see.
I mean, I think for me, it was definitely how often it came up that people were really anxious about like not knowing what happened to the chat on the other end, right? There's like no way to click give me notification. There's no way to like double check that it got answered, right? Like that came up so often and really contributed to people's feelings of like helplessness in that sphere. So yeah, for me, that's what it was.
I think I was surprised that there were so many, like everything was a trend, really. Everything that we heard from somebody else. We didn't really hear anything just from one person. So it seemed like people were really on the same page about what issues they were having and like what uh, technology barriers and interface barriers were causing anxiety for them and their reference team.
We were not surprised about the beeping. We were expecting everyone to say that one, but and they
Okay.
did. Yeah.
And I see somebody said lots of glad I'm not the only one moments. Yeah. Everything that everybody brought up, we were like, oh my gosh, same. That is annoying. That does make me anxious. So it was a fun interview process and it was nice to hear people's thoughts.
Well, and that it made it so like great to hear that yeah, everyone's sort of in the same boat, and it just like encourages us to always have these conversations with our colleagues of like, oh, what do you do to mitigate this, right? Like how do you improve on this part of the experience? And so and if we get enough of us together, maybe they'll change the interface, right? So really having these conversations of like how do you work around these technology barriers, I think can be helpful for all of our sort of anxiety in that sphere.
It was also great to just hear from other people doing cooperative chat because you might see their name appear or something, but you don't really think about their experience. You just kind of see them as like somebody else who is working at the same time. So it was just really nice to kind of humanize the other people that are working at the same time and commiserate.
Great. Perfect. Let's see if there's the Q&A. Okay. Are you able to there Selena was asking, are you able to move chats to virtual Zoom reference session? If yes, does that help or exacerbate librarians' anxiety?
We are able to do that in libchat, although some libraries specifically say like don't, offer to screen share with our students. So you do have to pay attention to that, but there is a function to, send a screen share request and, jump on a Zoom call. Personally, I think it helps to have that option, but I know that not everybody likes it and they might think that it's awkward or might not want to like jump on a Zoom chat or Zoom call with somebody that they don't know. So it probably depends on that specific person.
Okay, great. I think that's okay. Thank you very much, and I will start the second presentation. For second lightning talk, Christine will talk to us about cultivating chat expertise, a year-round training strategy. Okay, I'll hand it over to Christine.
Let me get those slides up.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Let me get Zoom to stop being in my way. So I'm going to be talking today about a strategy that I have developed, not super unique, about cultivating chat expertise and doing more than just one training, but year-round training. So the issue that I kind of encountered is a need for continual responsive training. So our chat is covered by mostly library staff. We do have some librarians that cover chat within there, but it's mostly library staff. We get a variety of questions, just like anybody else. So we're getting research questions, facilities questions, complaints, noise complaints, all those other things that are coming in. So I wanted to work on training, continued training to help make our answers more consistent and just increase how well we're doing in general. We usually do chat training with new staff, so they get kind of like a welcome to chat training. Here's everything you need to know right at the beginning. And then we're doing kind of a yearly refresher, talking about different aspects that we think we might need a little bit more information on, or new things that we need to let our staff know about. And what I wanted to do was have a way to train throughout the year on topics that either maybe we didn't have enough time to cover in that yearly session, or that I thought needed more information, even if we did cover them in the session, or things that arise during transcript reviews during the year, or that people ask me about. I wanted to be able to be getting that out to people. So the idea is pretty simple, just having an email series that addresses the training needs that I'm seeing, that is flexible and can really address those developing issues. So I wanted to make sure all those things are in there, but that this was really flexible, that I could change it if I needed to, that it was easy to digest. If I'm going to do emails, I want them to be something that you can read super quickly and that you don't have to really sit there and concentrate on. And that also goes to that low requirement for actually participating. So I wanted to make sure it was something that people could easily look at without having to commit a bunch of time. So actually making this happen, what I did was this is kind of the workflow that I've developed with this, is going through and developing a list of topics that I want to cover over the semester. So these might be things, like I said, that we didn't have enough time to cover, that maybe need a little bit more instruction, or that I've seen come up during transcript reviews. And these have changed from, I've only been doing this for a little bit of time, but these have changed as I've gone along, depending on things that I've seen. Mapping out dates of when these emails are going to go out. Right now I'm doing one per month at the beginning of the month, which allows space for additional emails to go out if new topics need to be added into what's already planned. And I wanted to be really conscious of email overload. We all get a ton of emails every single day, and I didn't want to contribute to that with a chat email every week. Then I'm going through and researching the different topics that I want to do. So what are some of the best practices that might be really good to point out, or any methods that might be useful for my staff to know about? Are there any learning objects that I want to include, like videos or links to other resources like websites or presentations that would be useful if that's something they want to look further into? Excuse me, and then writing a draft email for each of these, editing, and also using ChatGPT to edit. I tend to be a little long-winded in my emails and a little wordy. So using ChatGPT to edit for clarity and conciseness. And then when I get that back, doing a final edit of my own, because sometimes you're getting things from ChatGPT that just don't feel like your voice. It does a pretty good job of bringing that down, but it maybe doesn't feel like exactly what you'd say. Or it takes out things that you still feel are important, even though it does add to it being not as concise. So adding those things back in if you want. And then scheduling all those emails to go out. So I'm just using the schedule send feature on Gmail to plan those all out and get them scheduled so that they send out. And once I've done all this, I can kind of stop worrying about it unless I have new topics that come up inside the time period. These are some of my drafts. I probably will not keep them on the screen long enough for you to see them, but just as an example, I'll go back and forth really quick of what I wrote, and then when I ran it through ChatGPT, what I'm getting back. So I have a lot of information here. This one is about using the follow-up tag. So we use library help in my institution. So using the follow-up tag and what that means. So this is what ChatGPT is giving me back. So it's making that a more digestible email from what I wrote. This one is talking about emailing transcripts directly to individuals or departments who might need to follow up with a patron or need that information. And you can see, again, very long. And what ChatGPT is giving me to help bring that down into something that's easily digestible for my readers. And I add one more here. This one is not that much different. This is giving some of the features the library help has for screen sharing and other tools that you could use, and then putting it into a format that may be a little bit easier for patrons to read. Oh, I'm going slow, but really have a lot of time left. The outcome here is that this was very well received, or it has been well received so far. I've got a lot of emails directly from, so email responses directly from my emails that are going out with people thanking me for the information or saying, oh, I didn't know we could do that here. That's like inside the system, so that's really interesting to know. I've had a few thank yous in person where people have said, you know, oh, I really enjoy those emails when they come out. I had a request from one of the a colleague in a different department to write a targeted email. So that was really interesting. It was from our interlibrary loan department who wanted to kind of remind our staff on chat how we can interact with interlibrary loan and how it's built into our system. So like the way they would prefer that we share the links that they have for requests, how you can navigate to those links. So kind of reminders of how the system works. So I worked with a colleague to write up a draft for that. And we ended up kind of editing that together. I don't think I ran that one through ChatGPT because it was her draft and I wanted to make sure she had a lot of control. So I just edited and made suggestions. And then we sent that out as kind of one of the additional emails. So that's, you know, adding that space so I can send that additional topic out, which was well received. And several people said like, oh, that was really good to know about. I've also had staff suggest topics. So maybe something they've seen when they're chatting or they have questions about, or we do have some staff that will go and look at transcripts. So some things they've seen that either they have trouble with or they've seen other people have trouble with, that I've written emails and chat tips about to share with everyone. This is a good way to kind of like, if you have issues that you see in transcript review, to bring these up to the whole group, because, you know, maybe it's one person that you're seeing it on, but you want to make sure that you're not pulling anybody out if it's kind of a general thing that everybody might benefit from knowing. So that's something that I've really done there. For the future of this, and again, I've been doing this, I did it last semester, and then I'm partway through doing it again this semester, is to continue to expand on topics as needs arise. So when I do my transcript review, and that's not as fancy as other transcript reviews we've talked about today, but me just going through and like reading through and seeing what's happening on chat, I try to make note of anything that I'm seeing. So maybe answers that we're giving often that are not quite as accurate. We have two-factor authentication, which a lot of universities, a lot of everything has now. And, you know, you have students that maybe have left their phone at home or, you know, for some reason can't do 2FA. So is there a way around that? There is a way that you can get a temporary like bypass for 2FA. And I see a lot of people in transcripts like just saying, oh, if you don't have your phone, like, sorry, you can't do this. So those are things that I see where I'm like, okay, some of us just don't know that exists. So let's share out that information. I want to add additional learning objects. So I talked earlier kind of about adding videos in my research section, like researching videos that might be useful and researching links and websites and slideshows that might be useful. I didn't do that the first semester, but I've added that in this semester because I want to make sure that all my chatters feel like, oh, I'm reading your email, but I don't really get the concept. Is there additional information? So there's some videos that they could watch or other things that they could go for. I'm definitely going to be asking for feedback. I'm probably going to do that in this first year of doing this just in our summer training. So asking for feedback, seeing how people feel about it, seeing if there's topics that they would like brought up, or if there's maybe a way they would like me to put together for them to suggest topics, because I really want to know how everybody is feeling about this and if they feel like it's benefiting them over the semester. To have these little reminders or little tidbits of information that we have. I'm just going to stay on this slide for a second just to say, like, in my first semester, I focused a lot on kind of features of library help, just to be like, hey, did you know that you could do this? Did you know this is something that is built in that we can do? And here's how that happens. And this semester, I've focused a little bit more on increasing skills. So talking more about doing reference interviews in chat, about how do I help someone with research via chat. Again, things that our staff might not have as much experience with. Some lessons learned that I have felt on here are things like I need to stay open to what we actually need. I sit down when I'm developing my topics and think, like, what are good things that we should know? What do I want my staff to be doing? And sometimes those are things that I think are really important, and they may be, but might not be the things that we actually need in the moment. So focusing on the reality of what we need and not my aspirations for what we need. And this is where that transcript review, I think, comes in really handy. So paying attention to that and thinking through, like, what additional training do I see that we need in when I'm looking through the transcripts. Because those, I had everything planned out this semester, and I've actually written down a bunch more ideas, and now I'm like, okay, which one am I going to do for the next few months? Because I have about half of them planned this semester. And that's kind of the other thing. Planning as I go is okay. I really was stressing myself out and being like, I want to have all of these done and everything's planned and everything's ready, at the beginning of the semester. But this semester, I think that we got back from winter break and school started like the next day. Like, we did not have any planning time or any prep time before school started to get things going. So I got maybe like 3 of my emails completely done and scheduled, and I still have, a few more for this semester and then going into the summer that are not done, and that's okay. Sometimes things just get really busy. And another thing is to remind myself that, like, this is really important to me, and I think that it is useful, hopefully, but it's just an email. I don't need to stress so much about it. I can do my best to just share the information that I think everyone would benefit from, but it's okay to just relax and let it just be an email that I'm sending people. And that's a really good thing too. When I'm writing them, I'm going to go back. These are really long because I'm like, oh, it needs to include everything. I need to make sure they say everything that everybody could possibly think about with this. But I really just need to give them the bullet points version. Here's the information. Let me know if you have more questions about it. And I'd be happy to, meet or expand upon this if you, want to know more about it. But it doesn't have to be a grandiose plan or idea. It's just an email. So I think I'm a little bit like 5 minutes shy of actually hitting 20 minutes, but this gives us extra room for questions if anybody has any. I'll leave it on this slide for a minute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, if anyone has question regarding training how do you provide additional training or to your operators? Feel free to type in your question on the Q&A or on the chat. We have a question on the Q&A is, oops, I'm not sure if 41, yes. Do you all use Teams? And if so, when do you use Teams? And when do you use email with this kind of information? It's
I'm just reading it over again as well.
okay.
We don't use Teams at all. We are completely Google based, but this is just me sharing in Gmail. So I'm just sending these out through Gmail. I'm not communicating with them regularly via chat about this stuff unless I felt someone individually, needed to talk about it, but I'm just sharing out via Gmail.
Okay, and do you have is there any topics that you need to break down? I noticed that you had an email regarding screencast or screen sharing. Do you have a part 1 email or part 2 email, or is it too much information?
Yeah. I didn't for that. I try to make it like, here's some information. If you have more questions about it, come back to me, but I don't want to, I want to be able to share a lot of different things that come along. And especially with that, you might have noticed that that one had a lot of links in it, and that is linking out to information from library help about how that specific feature works. So it doesn't specifically require me to answer exactly how you can function within it. They can go and look for that additional information and training to see if that's something they want to use. Especially with those, I'm definitely not making anybody use them because I don't really use them either. But I want to make sure people are aware if it's something that you really feel like benefits you, because we do have a few people that have used them since.
Okay. And the medium, you mentioned that you mainly use email, and then you are planning maybe to add video. Do you have, let's say a YouTube channel at your institution, or do you have other medium instead of email? Does your audience like to have a blog post, or they prefer email?
I haven't asked them that, if there's a different method they prefer. Maybe that's something that I'll ask when we get around to the summer training and see how they've felt about this year. We do have a YouTube channel, and I sent out one earlier in the semester for reference interviews, and was that the reference interview one? Okay, I sent out 2 that have videos. The one that I used all of our videos was for helping with research. So because we have mostly library staff covering our chat and not librarians, the expectation of where I want them to go with research, does end at some point. I do not expect them to do the job of a librarian that they are not paid for. That's not their job. They're not paid for that. So I really wanted to talk about these are expectations. I do want you to go at least this far. Here's how that works. And then if you're not familiar with some of the concepts that I'm talking about, or you haven't done this a lot, here are a lot of videos that our library has produced that really talk through some of those concepts. A previous one that I did, the reference interview one, I didn't use our videos. I used the videos of some other wonderful librarian from YouTube that I thought did a really good job walking through the concepts of reference interviews and how we can kind of work that into what we're doing. So I might eventually make some of my own videos. They probably won't go onto our YouTube channel. I'll just have them so that I can share them out. But I've used what we have already created yet, and then from other creators.
Okay, we have another question. It sounds like a lot of transcript to analyze every month. I'm so impressed. With which tool do you use for transcript reviews, and what criteria?
I think the other presenters that were in this lightning talk might answer this too,
Okay,
because I know, well, I'll answer because I don't use anything, but they've done a lot more transcript review, I know, than I have, because I've seen them do another presentation before. I'm not doing anything specific for transcript review. So when I'm saying transcript review, that is me reviewing the transcripts. So I'm just going into the system and reading through things because we're not doing the larger review like I know you and the other presenters have done. So I'll see what they say.
I also just go in and read through the transcripts. It just takes a while.
That is my morning routine. I start and read transcripts.
Do you have any on all the email that you received, do you have any feedback, or you are planning? You said you are planning to have maybe a survey for feedback. Um, um, yes.
Most of what I've got is just kind of like, thanks, I didn't know this existed, or hey, this is really useful information. Thanks for sharing. So nothing super in depth that people have told me. I haven't decided how I'm going to ask for that feedback. If I'm just going to like in the meeting be like, what do you all think about this? Or make it more official and put like together a little survey so people can give information. Probably better that way. So if people want to anonymously tell me they hate extra emails, they can, but we'll see.
Okay, we have two more questions. Anyone single chat tip, any single chat tip you have learned in the course of doing this continual training that sort of changed chat or made it easier that you wished you knew earlier?
I don't know. So I haven't had anybody come back. And like I said, I haven't asked for that feedback yet. So we've only been doing this for a short amount of time. So I haven't had any where I was like blown away because I done a lot of research into what our platform does. So I wasn't particularly shocked by any of them. But I bet there were staff members out there that were like, why haven't I been doing this the whole time? Or, oh, I could just be emailing it in that way instead of doing it in this other fashion. But I guess that's something I'll learn.
Okay, and as staff come and go, do you think you'll start recycle emails and reshare past emails again, especially
That is,
for common issue?
yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, quite possibly. I haven't thought about that before just because I haven't been doing it for that very long, like I said, but that's a really good question. I think that I probably will now that you bring that up, if I see those issues kind of continue to arise. I'm hoping that what happens with some of this and with our yearly training is that we can continue to grow and get better at what we're doing. And then some of the ones where I'm like, hey guys, please do this thing don't have to happen quite as much. But yeah, I think it'd be a good idea periodically to bring back up the ones that are really important.
Okay, thanks. For the previous lightning talk, you mentioned in a question how often an operator picked up simultaneous chat, meaning multiple chat. Do you have any feedback, Erin or Jen, regarding is it a really is it a schedule issue or regarding having to handle multiple chats?
Are you asking about people picking up multiple chats at once?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Some people just have different policies either for their reference team or for themselves. Some people have to, their reference team tells them that they need to pick up like X number of chats per hour every time they're doing a cooperative shift. So that might make them like pick up multiple at a time. Some people responded to the survey and said like, absolutely not, that's a ridiculous expectation that I would be chatting with multiple people at once. I think the general idea is that for local chats, you pick up every single one that comes in. And for cooperative chats, you're usually working on one, maybe two at a time if one has kind of fizzled out. But yeah, it seems like everybody just kind of has different expectations, either for themselves or external expectations too.
Yeah, and that's something that we think sort of bleeds in. This is going beyond our presentation, but it sort of bleeds into, I don't want to say feelings of resentment, but there was a question in there about like, well, what about the people that don't pick up any chats and they're logged in? You know, it's like their institution might have different expectations of how many they pick up versus like your institution or your own personal feelings on it. Like I pick up as many as I can because I feel comfortable with it, but like other people might not. But how does that, you know, again, I don't want to say resentment, but like what kind of atmosphere is that promoting in cooperative chat if it's sort of uneven? So, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody has very different comfort levels in working cooperative chat too. Like we realize that a lot of people have a lot of anxiety just about working cooperative chat in general. So they don't pick up multiple chats and it takes a lot of effort just to pick up one in a shift. So yeah, that is something that definitely needs to be talked about within reference teams so that people can, you know, I don't want to say pull their weight, but, you know, help each other out and, you know, be active during the cooperative chat shifts.
Great. I think that's all for today. I will hand it over to Carla, and if anyone has a question, they can contact you. They'll find your contact on the slides, I believe. And yeah, so thank you very much, Erin, Jen, Christine, and Pamela.
Thank you.
Thank you, presenters, and thank you, Kinsley, for moderating the session. Very fascinating. Makes me want to go back to my librarians and talk about some refresher training. Okay, thank you again. I am going to stop the recording now.